Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Jessica Clemons, and this is a breakdown of Godzilla Kong. This is our MonsterVerse rewatch series, and every week we broke down Godzilla, Kong Skull Island, Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, Godzilla vs. Kong, and now we finally made it to the very end. This is Godzilla Kong, the New Empire. So let's get into it and discuss how Godzilla never explodes from ingesting so much nuclear energy, how old the Scar King is, and how Zuko just became the Ant-Man of the MonsterVerse. But first, be sure to check out nerdriot.shop to check out the latest and greatest in New Rockstars merch. Right now, you can grab our MultiVerse Tour shirt inspired by Deadpool or the Face Off shirt featuring both of our favorite heroes. Grabbing some merch over at nerdriot.shop is the best way to support the channel and all the work that we do here at New Rockstars. I'm currently wearing the Xavier Institute shirt that I am obsessed with, and I will wear this until I die. We open the movie to the bright crystals, green ones to be exact. We'll see later in the film that these crystals were formed somewhere in Hollow Earth, where the remaining now known Iwi tribe exist. We also open in an eerie version of Elvis Presley's Welcome to My World. This is a song about metaphorically inviting someone into your life to share and bask in your life, which we're pursuing now with Kong. In our MonsterVerse rewatch series, I mentioned in Godzilla vs. Kong how Adam Wingard, the director for both Godzilla vs. Kong and the New Empire, said lyrically and in tone he saw Kong as old Elvis. The last time we saw Kong was after he battled Godzilla and Mechagodzilla in Hong Kong. He's grayer with a little beard now, so some time has passed. He ended the last movie in Hollow Earth at the new Kong monitoring station with Dr. Andrews, Gia, and Nathan there. Gia and Dr. Andrews both have returned to this movie, though Nathan has not. However, his little astronaut is still being seen throughout the movie. Kong runs through Hollow Earth. Like the last film, we open with somewhere on Skull Island for Kong, and here we open with somewhere in Hollow Earth with an inverted view of Hollow Earth. While Kong was relaxing in the last movie with chirps from these god-awful looking, wild-looking prehistoric birds flying overhead, here they just fly on by while he outruns what I think are death jackals. Godzilla grabs a death jackal and rips it above his head, which is his newfound intimidation technique, which is truly very ruthless. He ripped the war bats apart in Godzilla vs. Kong, but it wasn't over his head. And I mentioned in the rewatch series as well that Adam Wingard uses green blood for the creature, so it's less gory and more fun for the kids that are watching. Now covered in jackal blood, Kong decides to wash himself under a nearby waterfall, which he did in the last movie as well to wake himself up. Biting into a piece of the death jackal, and Kong breaks his tooth. We later see he gets it fixed and starts rocking that metal tooth we saw in the trailer. The death jackal corpse starts moving, and we see it's Doug coming for a bite. This creature does not have a name, but has been memed as Doug, and Adam loved it and vowed if he ever does another MonsterVerse movie, he'll find a way to add Doug into it. So here he is in all his little chonky glory. Kong hears a roar and reacts to it, following the sound to this little guy. According to merchandise, this is a parrot frog. It inhales and I assume like a parrot echoes what it hears. Yet, seeing how fast Kong reacted to hearing the call of another ape had him so excited and searching. We know throughout the MonsterVerse that Kong has really felt like a teenage orphan for most of his life and always looking for his family. Last movie, Gia lured him into Antarctica's vortex by telling him his family might be down there. So we even know in Hollow Earth, he's still searching for that family and home. We then welcome Dr. Eileen Andrews, the head of Kong Research, who is currently giving a lecture on her Hollow Earth research. Nathan Lynn worked at Denham University of Theoretical Science in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in the last movie. I believe this is the same school, though the HES probably stands for Hollow Earth Studies. Later, Bernie refers to the Monarch Station as MESS, Monarch Hollow Earth Station. Regardless, though, this shows how far we've come at Monarch, choosing to research the Titans rather than destroy them, and Serizawa would be so proud of us. Andrews also discusses in an interview how Kong likes being in Hollow Earth, but it's not common for his species to be so alone. She also mentions how he's the last of his kind, which like Gia, we learn isn't true. There's just a lot of uncharted areas within Hollow Earth that Monarch hasn't reached yet, so we just haven't seen them. During the lecture, we get glimpses of things we've seen before, like the hologram created by Apex of vortexes on Earth from Godzilla vs. Kong, and the Hollow Earth diagram from Nathan Lynn's office. We even get quick cuts of the Apex commercial from the last movie. At one point, it even shows Gia and Kong touching hands on the boat that was transporting him from Skull Island to Antarctica in the rain. She mentions as long as Godzilla and Kong don't venture into each other's territories, we're fine, and we're lucky Godzilla's up above fighting for us. This segues us into Godzilla fighting Scylla in Rome. Scylla was last seen in Godzilla King of the Monsters. Originally, they were hibernating in Arizona at Monarch Outpost number 5 before Ghidorah awakened them. In Godzilla Kong the Hunted, a new comic book that acts as the prequel to this movie, Scylla was off the coast of India, absorbed some nuclear energy, then went to the UK nuclear labs, then tore up a hidden US airbase, then finally made it to Italy where Godzilla's waiting to beat their ass, which we see play out here. Now they're terrorizing Rome. Godzilla and Scylla speed into each other, and as we've seen Godzilla do before, he loves doing this running into each other clash. This is like a staple for MonsterVerse movies now. Godzilla then blows Scylla apart using his atomic blast, which is truly horrible. What a menace. I like how both Titans, Kong and Godzilla begin the movie covered in their enemy slime blood. What a nice touch. Just like, two creatures of the same coin, or whatever that quote is. Then we get our very bisexual title page for Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. The colors, as we know from the trailer, foreshadow Godzilla's evolving and Kong's thunderous new gauntlet, along with, Godzilla's original blue tone, of course. We're at Monarch Outpost 1 in Hollow Earth. There are a ton of Monarch outposts on Earth. That's why we have like 33, 75, 58, and so on. This is Outpost 1 since this is the first one made on Hollow Earth, which is technically kind of a new world to us. We saw that being built at the end of the last movie. It's very quick, but we can see a photo of Adam Wingard's cat, Mischief, on the desk of a computer in Monarch Outpost number 1. Adam based a lot of Godzilla's mannerisms after his cat, including his cat-like sleeping in a bed in the Roman Colosseum, because like a cat, if he fits, he sits. And as for scale, he was around 393 feet in the last movie, and according to Legendary's promotional material, it's the same one for this movie. The Colosseum is approximately around like 615 feet long by 510 feet wide, so he can absolutely fit. So he fits, he sits. I love cats, and I love Godzilla being a giant cat, because I would love him to be my cat. Kong is 337 feet, which, like Godzilla, I assume was the same height he was in Godzilla vs. Kong. In Godzilla vs. Kong, the intro, they had it mislabeled in stats. It was his Skull Island height, so I assume this is what it was supposed to be. The Monarch Outpost gets a signal of a large seismic activity and a rupture in the ground. The computers start acting crazy, and clearly a Titan is coming. We're then taken to Monarch's Hollow Earth's access point in Barbados. Eileen and Gia live and work out of the Barbados station, while Kong stays in Hollow Earth and they monitor him. We're then taken to Gia's school, and I love the juxtaposition of Gia's school with Maddie's school in the last movie. Maddie just went to like a regular Florida high school with posters and warning signs for Titans. Gia goes to a Monarch school for kids affected by the Titans. I said it then and I'll say it again. Compared to the other movies, you see how we're progressing in a kaiju world. They move so far ahead every movie. Gia falls asleep in class, but the teacher's board has notes on marine organisms. Tiamat. The window has displays for the Temple of Mothra and the Yunnan rainforest and the pyramids in Egypt with a monkey at the top like we'll be seeing later. This feels like an homage to the 2014 Godzilla, where the items foreshadowing the movie were in young Brody's classroom. This won't be the first 2014 homage in this film that we see. The white flakes that fall around Gia are the same snow-like petals in the forest outside of the Iwi tribe's home we see later. The clock reads 1313 before it all like freaks out, and it could be a reference to 1313 being an angel number. Then we see pink spikes, which can both be a reference to Godzilla's future with pink spikes or the pyramids we see in Iwi's Hollow Earth. I think it's Godzilla because we hear a roar, but also below it we see some gold stars. Eileen references an old Iwi scripture that called Godzilla the one that ate a star. The framing of the stars leading to the pink spikes could be representative of Godzilla's past and future. Throughout the movie, Kong is searching for a home, and she is kind of just like searching to be normal. It feels like their stories are sad, but they always find reassurance in each other, which is very nice. Back at home, Andrews is watching TV and looking over Iwi culture books, and I assume she's looking for the best way to understand what Gia's going through. The TV shows some major updates. The man is talking about the storm that wiped out the Iwi village on Skull Island, and it's on record that the only survivor was Gia. She was saved by Kong, but the rest of the villagers were ripped away by the waters. In the Godzilla vs. Kong novelization, they spoke about how Gia was left. She had a sister and some remaining villagers who were attacked by a Titan and some ripped by the waters, and in her last moments of survival, she was rescued by Kong. Though the last movie was in Pensacola, Florida, Bernie is now in Miami, and his new recording studio has been severely updated, especially in location. Bernie has a ton of stuff in his studio, including lava lamps, Godzilla dolls, and Kong dolls. The internet noticed the Kong doll was from Godzilla vs. Kong's Playmate Toys, but I also think the Godzilla one is too. But I immediately caught the Mutu poster from the 2014 Godzilla in the back. Bernie mentions his podcast being sponsored by Gargantua Insurance. This is probably a normal insurance company now within their universe. However, in 1966, the War of Gargantuas, also referred to as Frankenstein's monster, Sanda vs. Gara, was released in Japan. This was the kaiju film directed by Ishiro Honda that feels like everything the old Godzilla movies incorporated, just with horrible looking weird monsters, though it's very heartfelt. One of the podcast episodes is called Planet X on the Horizon. This was the planet featured in the invasion of the Astro Monster. They also had one episode on MK Ultra, the crazy operation of the CIA experimenting on humans that inspired the science labs and they cloned Tyrone. Another episode on Operation High Jump, which was featured in Godzilla vs. Kong. This covered an American Navy expedition to the Arctic. It involved 4,700 men, 70 ships, and 33 aircrafts with the goal of scientific research and establishing research bases in the Arctic. So that's probably a Monarch mission, so Bernie's probably right here. Andrews goes to Bernie for help since the people she works with believes it's electrical interference and not another Titan. Bernie tells her Monarch owes him a lot for not being there for him after the events of Mechagodzilla, and when no one would believe what happened on his podcast, he even mentions Ghidorah Stan 64 trolling him. 64 is also the year that the Ghidorah movie was released, so it's probably a call out and homage to that. Andrews gets an alert of Godzilla's movement through a Monarch alert on her phone. Again, we note how fast Monarch's tech can upgrade. In King of the Monsters, we were stunned to learn that Emma found a way to isolate Godzilla's signal and track his vitals. emails. Here, we're just getting an alert on a phone. Simple, effective, the future. When Godzilla wakes up from the Coliseum nap, he steps on a spray-painted photo of himself with sunglasses eating a pizza. Though around the pizza Godzilla art are more Easter eggs. There's a piece that says punch, punch, punch and a detached fist with little rings around the wrist. This is an Easter egg for Jet Jaguar. The punch, punch, punch is Jet Jaguar's theme song that played at the end of Godzilla vs. Megalon. At the bottom left, it says Save the Earth, which could refer to the 2004 video game Godzilla Save the Earth. However, there are eyes on either side, and I think this could be a reference to Hedorah, the smog monster. The theme song that came out of that movie was also Save the Earth. There's an outline of Knifehead from Pacific Rim and Ultimate Kaiju. Pacific Rim and Godzilla share many similarities, and we'd want nothing more than to put these two in the same universe. Both franchises even acknowledge the other's part a lot. I mentioned in the King of Monsters breakdown how we don't call Titans Kaijus because Pacific Rim had already claimed it. Below Knifehead is Skeleturtle, who showed up in Mothra vs. Godzilla for a brief moment. We also see a UFO at the top right, which looks like the one from Invasion of the Astro Monsters, which has a couple of Easter eggs in the movie already. Additionally, Godzilla stepping on the mural was inspired by Godzilla -1. In an interview with Adam Wingard, he mentioned Godzilla is stomping through Rome and there's a close-up of his foot crushing a building with a mural of him painted on the side of it. Godzilla -1's trailer came out and there's this fantastic shot where it's a close-up of Godzilla's foot, but he stomps down on it and it pushes the ground up in front of him. As soon as I saw that, I took my iPhone into the VFX supervisor's office and I was like, that's what we need to do with our shot. While Godzilla is swimming his way to France, Kong is escaping Hollow Earth, which pops him up in Barbados at Andrew and Gia's Monarch Station. Luckily, it's just because of his toothache, which Trapper, played by Dan Stevens, comes to save the day. Trappers is a new character. He's also a dentist, or I think like a veterinarian for Titans. It seems like he has also a past with Eileen. Later, someone calls him Ace Ventura, and that's 100% accurate. Trappers mentions that Kong's new tooth is made of the same shield from the Heave ships, so that bad boy is nearly indestructible. Before leaving, Bernie tells Andrews that the signal Godzilla is hearing is a distress call from Hollow Earth that's only getting stronger. Luckily, Dr. Hampton allows Andrews to go to Hollow Earth with a small team before DC hears about the distress signal. This means probably the next movie, the White House is going to learn about the distress signal and be so pissed that no one told them about it, because there's always that divide between science and politics that pissed them off in the MonsterVerse. They follow Kong into Hollow Earth with our new Heave ship. The aggressive bright lights look like it's separating our molecular structure, and I mentioned in the Godzilla vs. Kong breakdown, in Adam's movie Pop Skull, the main character ODs on Robitussin, and he has this like trip out sequence that inspired this scene and still holds up in this movie. The terrain is much different from the last movie, and that's because, as we know, the vortexes at different spots on Earth pop us out at somewhere else in Hollow Earth. So this one pops us out into an open field. Godzilla knows there's something bigger coming, so he needs to power himself up, but he doesn't have much time. Speeding up the process and evolving will probably do the trick. So he goes to a French power plant and ingests all the nuclear energy he can find. In King of the Monsters, we used a nuclear torpedo to wake him up and give him a boost, not enough to overpower him into exploding, but enough to get him dancing, you know? And he rose from the water, spikes pulsating, and then released a large atomic blast to the heavens. That's why we see a burst of energy that expels out of him as soon as he collects all that nuclear energy from the French power plant. It's too much pressure, too much buildup, it expels. Godzilla leaves a giant footprint. He did this also in the 1998 Godzilla movie and destroyed and absorbed a nuclear power plant in the 1985 movie as well. Back in Hollow Earth, they find Monarch Outpost 1 destroyed and the bloody handprint left behind by the Scar King. Kong left the same bloody handprint in Skull Island, and like here, it shows that he's not a king or a god, because he bleeds, he's defeatable. We want to thank Geology for sponsoring this video, but also to thank them for making sure we look camera ready all day, every day. Geology's products use just a handful of powerful proven ingredients that have been trusted by dermatologists for decades. If you don't know where to start, Geology can create a simple and effective skincare routine just for you. All you gotta do is take a 30-second quiz. Geology can help you fight acne, reduce oiliness, prevent wrinkles, combat dark or puffy under eyes, have smoother, hydrated skin, and target signs of aging. Right now, if you use code NEWROCKSTARS100, Geology will give you 100% off their award-winning skincare trial set. You also get an additional bonus offer of up to 30% off one hair, skin, or body product when you add it to your trial. That's 100% off plus an additional 30% off. That's a lot of offs. Just click the link in the description or go to geolog.ie/rockstars100 to get started. Kong retrieves his axe from his Hollow Earth cave. The end is equipped with Godzilla's spike, and the Kongs in the past made these weapons to fight Godzilla, which is truly the only way they could win. Beyond the fog, we're introduced to Zuko. They revealed Zuko in trailer footage with Bernie calling him Baby Kong. Zuko is 149 feet tall, which makes him 45 feet taller than Kong was in Skull Island, who was also younger in that film, but not as adolescent as Zuko is here. This is just me noticing and flagging that like weird kind of shape structure and how they kind of react as, you know, bigger, smaller babies. Also, throughout the movie, really pay attention to how big that baby monkey is, because it's really funny to see him in the forest compared to trees, because he's bigger than all the trees. Suko looks to be related to the Scar King. Later in the underground temple, you see some of the apes with babies that resemble Suko. It's like the idea that this tyrant king not only put fear into the other apes, but has been reproducing with the females. And I love it when Kong just uses Suko as a blunt weapon and beats the other apes with him. It was very funny, and my entire theater cracked up. On the ground, one of the crew members is eaten by a tree. This is referred to as a tree mimic online and in the novelization for the movie. Godzilla is traveling completely imbued with radiation and on the prowl. With that energy, he's on his way to Tiamat in an Arctic lair. In this movie, Tiamat is labeled as Destroyer, and sometimes we're classified as Protectors and Destroyers. Protectors were like Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Behemoth. The opposite were classified as Destroyers like Ghidorah, Rodan, Scylla, and Mechagodzilla. She's also living in the largest stockpile of energy on Earth, as her lair is in the path of electromagnetically charged solar winds, so Godzilla is planning on supercharging himself up. He did the same thing to Tiamat in the Godzilla Dominion comics. He needed sustenance and rest, looking to get his energy replenished, so he swims to Hollow Earth and is attacked by Tiamat, who drags him into a sunken cavern. Tiamat gives up during the fight, but Godzilla wanders upon his old lair and rests there. The gang reaches the entrance to the Iwis and Hollow Earth, and we see the carved design for Mothra that we saw at the temple in China during King of the Monsters. A dragonfly guides Gia to the button to let them into the Iwi village, and I think these little guys kind of resemble Mothra, but I do remember in King of the Monsters, when Mothra begins to hatch beyond the waterfall, the light up bugs fly from the moon to surround her, so these little bugs may be always near her. Gia pushes through the organic matter that separates the Iwi home and Hollow Earth from the outside world. Later we see Mothra repairing it, so I think she also organically just made this. As Kong travels with Suko, they start getting close, and who would have thought that home is just with this baby ape? It's also like we all forgot that he was just being used like a bat earlier. We're in the Arctic Ocean, Tiamat's domain, and Godzilla is going fight for fight with that creature. Tiamat illuminates pink, which makes sense where Godzilla gets it later after taking over her lair. In this really cool shot, Tiamat bites Godzilla's head, and Godzilla illuminates and sets up his atomic blast, and it just highlights the pink around his head. It's so sick. Once killed, bits of Tiamat float to the top of the water. We saw a scene like this in King of the Monsters, and up rises Godzilla with Tiamat in his mouth like he did with Kevin's head, also in King of the Monsters. Once the gang makes it inside, the Iwi people immediately take them hostage. So it's revealed Gia isn't the last of her kind, but the last of Skull Island. We learned that the Iwi people sent the distress signal using the crystal quartz, and the Iwi people led us to their room where they have engraved on the walls the prophecy that a Skull Island native will free Mothra to help protect the vortexes and the people of Hollow Earth. As simple that, I guess. The images depicted in the movie show how Scar King uses Shimu's crystal as we see throughout the movie, and he led his tribe to a war with the monster who ate a star, aka Godzilla. So the reference of the monster who ate a star came from the Godzilla vs. Kong novelization, where Gia mentions that the titan that ate a star became bad. However, this is just how they referred to Godzilla. So in Godzilla vs. Kong, we learned that Godzilla was banished by the Kongs, though here we find out the banishment was led by Scar King and a bunch of angry apes. So how old is the freaking Scar King? Because he goes back centuries. Back with Kong, we're introduced to the Scar King. He's 318 feet tall, a little shorter than Kong, and he's the original character created for the movie. Once Kong is up against Scar King, the Scar King uses his whiplash. This whip is made out of literal bones, and we saw how strong it is from the trailer footage, ripping the buildings apart. Scar King reveals he's forced Shimu to work for him. Shimu in Japanese means frost or gray hair. She's also an original character like the Scar King for the movie. Shimu appeared in the prequel comic of the movie in the form of a cave drawing that Kong stares at. The same cave drawing was revealed and featured in the crossover event for Godzilla vs. Kong and Call of Duty. Andrews tells us Shimu covered the Earth in the last ice age, which magnificent. I'm sorry, I love her. We learned from the new Empire toy release that Shimu's abilities consist of frostbite, breath, or blast, depending on which toy you get. We see her using it when Kong loses his hand, protecting himself from that blast. Suko takes Kong to the Iwi people's village beyond Mothra's webbing because he can sense Gia. Kong tells Gia he lost his home, and honestly, it's so heartbreaking. He finally found his home and it's gone because of a lunatic ape. Kong collapses and touches Gia's hand, and it's silent, but you can hear his heartbeat. This reminds me of all the other times Gia only hears the heartbeat from Godzilla in Godzilla vs. Kong. In Tiamat's lair, Godzilla is kinda hatching. He rises from the ice in all his pink glory. Some say this may be an homage to the introduction in King Kong vs. Godzilla from 1962. His molecular structure has changed along with the amount of energy he now has, so in a way, he's absolutely evolved. Kong has a lot of tissue and nerve damage to his hand, and this is when Trapper and Andrews reveal Project Powerhouse. After Mechagodzilla, they realize they need to do something to enhance Kong in case a stronger titan appears, so they made a prototype glove that supplies massive damage, though the government didn't approve of making titans stronger no matter how good they were, so it was shut down, but the prototype was already sent to Hollow Earth, which is a sneaky justification for Adam to be making in the script. Kong receives his Beast Glove, and Beast stands for Bioenhanced Anatomic Seismic Thunder Glove. Zuko appears, alerting them that the Scar King and Shimu are on their way, but this can't be done with just Kong alone, so he enters the vortex to enlist Godzilla. One of the vortexes take Kong to Cairo, Egypt. We saw his entrance in the trailer footage. In Godzilla King of the Monsters, we also saw Cairo was home to Monarch Outpost 65, built around Sekhmet. Then we see Godzilla in Gibraltar. They do this quick face-off yelling at one another, and Godzilla jumps off the rocks like a cat, using the power of their hind legs to really push themselves off, and I love it. Gia lifts her hand to Mothra, and we saw this in trailer footage, and out emerges the queen of the Titans, my girl, the queen of the monsters. I love her. And out comes Mothra. She's back, and I love her so much. That's my queen. She's queen. It's how can you hate Mothra? She's perfect in every way. So in an interview with Adam Wingard, he mentioned how excited he was to do a Destroy All Monsters vibe that needed Mothra included. In an interview with Den of Geek, he mentioned how this Mothra is different though, saying anything I say now wouldn't necessarily be canon. So I don't want to necessarily tell people what she is. I have my own thoughts of what version of Mothra this is, but I think it'll be exciting to kind of let that unfold because I'm sure we'll explore more. So there's no concrete answer as to what Mothra this is, but we know from King of the Monsters they mentioned finding an egg on an expedition deep in Mothra's territory. While there's a chance this is a different species egg, it could inspire the thought that Mothra laid eggs in different spots, including one in Hollow Earth, but only God knows how long ago that was. Mike Dougherty also mentioned his Mothra in King of the Monsters. She basically reincarnates through her eggs, so she never really dies. So if that's true, once she dies, if she hatches somewhere else, it's the same essence of our Mothra. It depends on what Adam will go on in the future, but if he wants to build off what King of the Monsters embraced, that can summarize which Mothra this is. On Earth, Godzilla is literally gunning for Kong. He floods the streets and races cars to get to Kong. Then we get this funny scene of Kong measuring the distance between Godzilla and the vortex to get him to fall through it, and as we know, Godzilla is known to fall into holes all the time. In Godzilla vs. Kong, they fought in Hong Kong like wrestlers, and we literally see Godzilla suplex Kong, and I love this choreography so much. Then Kong punches Godzilla, and we hear a ring bell like one from a wrestling ring, but it's actually the impact of the Beast Glove that makes with Godzilla's dome, and Adam's just having fun now. Godzilla uses the new pink atomic blast and Kong evades it, even jumping John McClane style like he did off the ship from Godzilla's atomic blast in the last movie. Godzilla steps on Kong's chest like he did in Godzilla vs. Kong. Luckily though, Mothra arrives to calm the situation, and we saw this scene of them roaring beside each other in promotional material and the trailer, but they clearly edited out Mothra in between them. Bernie already deduced it, but through Iwi technology, they pour liquid metal into the water, and that chemical reaction forces the two electromagnetic pyramids to come together and clash, causing an anti-gravity shockwave for a moment. So everything up will come down, and this will give them time to ensure Scar King can't access the surface world through the vortexes. Scar King leads Shimu and the other apes to the Iwi's new home so they can jump through one of the portals to Earth. He catches onto their plan, and Shimu stops the pyramids from clashing using her frostbite breath. Luckily, Trapper brings back the very testy birds from the beginning who distract Scar King's crew for a moment. Then we get this running scene we saw from the trailer, which I'll never get tired of. Truly, I love it. The running scene from the trailer leads to the collision between Mothra, Godzilla, Kong, and kinda, he's trying to help Zuko versus Shimu, Scar King, and the other apes. Mothra protects the people in the portals using her webs, though it doesn't stop Shimu and Scar King from escaping when gravity reactivates itself. Kong, Godzilla, Scar King, and Shimu race to the portal that drops them in Rio de Janeiro. Scar King drops the crystal used to control Shimu, and Kong and Scar King die fighting for its control. Zuko with Kong's axe smashes the crystal, causing a pulse to shoot them all back. We saw this scene actually in the trailer. This breaks the control over Shimu, which leads to Godzilla, Kong, and Shimu kicking Scar King's ass, freezing him to a solid, and then Kong breaking him into pieces. All's well that ends well when Godzilla goes back to the Roman Colosseum to sleep. Mothra has returned to Hollow Earth, I presume, and Zuko, Kong, and Shimu release the subterranean apes, welcoming a new dawn of freedom! And that is it for my breakdown of Godzilla, Kong, the New Empire. Thanks for listening to all my rambles about the MonsterVerse, and thanks for sticking through this. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Lulu_Clemons, and subscribe to all our channels in the new Rockstars network for all that deep analysis that y'all can't get enough of. And always remember, let them fight.